I found out my fiancée was pregnant the day before our wedding. The worst part? It wasn't my child. I stood in the doorway, trying to force a smile as she hurriedly wiped her eyes, her hands trembling. The sound of my heart shattering was louder than any of the words she just said, but she was too caught up in her own lie to notice. "Please," Charlotte begged, her voice shaking as she took a step toward me. "I never wanted it to happen like this." She could barely meet my eyes, her lips parted as though searching for an explanation that I didn't want to hear. Her chest heaved with quiet sobs. I'd seen her cry before, but this was different. This wasn't the tearful plea of a woman in love, this was desperation. And betrayal. I wanted to ask who the father was, but the answer was already clear in her eyes. "Who?" I whispered, my voice barely audible, afraid of hearing the words that would confirm it all. Her gaze dropped, unable to meet mine, and my stomach churned. "I never meant for you to find out this way," she murmured. I turned and walked out without a word, leaving everything I had built, our future, our plans, crumbling behind me. But the real question wasn't why she had done it. It was why, after everything, she still thought I would stay. When I first met Charlotte, I was enchanted by her calmness. She had this quiet elegance that drew people in without her even trying. It wasn't the way she looked, though she was undeniably beautiful, but the way she listened. No one had ever listened to me the way she did, as if every word I said mattered, like I was important in ways I couldn't even articulate. It started small. Late-night talks, casual walks around the city, laughing at nothing, finding comfort in silence. She was calm in my storm. And it felt like we were both healing from something. I didn't know what exactly, but I was sure that whatever it was, it had been haunting her long before I came into her life. We got engaged 6 months ago. The ring was simple, but it felt right. A symbol of something bigger than either of us, something destined, something we were meant to build together. But the cracks started to show sooner than I expected. I never asked about her past. She didn't talk much about it, and I didn't press. But after the proposal, something changed. She began pulling away, little by little, each time she caught herself getting too close. The late-night texts that I couldn't read, the sudden mood swings. Her long silences. They all piled up, and I found myself questioning what I had once believed was perfect. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. One evening, after a long day of work, I had come home earlier than usual to surprise her. I walked into the living room, and there she was, sitting on the couch, her face buried in her hands, sobbing. I couldn't make sense of it at the time. She tried to tell me it was nothing, that it was just stress from the wedding planning. But I saw it. The way her eyes had been darting to her phone, the way she suddenly looked away when I entered the room. She was hiding something, and it gnawed at me like a wound that wouldn't heal. "Charlotte, what's going on?" I asked gently, sitting down next to her, trying to bridge the growing distance between us. I don't know how to explain it," she said, wiping away the tears but not looking at me. I could feel her holding back. But what was she so afraid to say? It wasn't just wedding nerves, it was something bigger. I could sense it in her every word, in the way she turned away when I got too close. She wanted me to be there, but not too close, like I might see something I wasn't supposed to. Over the next few weeks, I tried to push past it. I wanted to believe her when she said everything was fine. I wanted to believe that the wedding was the only thing that was stressing her out, that it was the pressure of our future together that made her so distant. I kept convincing myself that maybe I was just overthinking it. But I wasn't. One night, I found her journal hidden in the drawer of her nightstand. The sight of it made my heart race, but I told myself not to look. It wasn't my place to invade her privacy. Yet, when I opened it the next day, unable to resist any longer, I found a page that made my stomach drop. The entry read like a confession. "I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can be the woman he thinks I am. I don't know if I'm capable of loving him the way he deserves. The ink on the page blurred as if the words had been hastily written, a reflection of the chaos inside her. And that was when I began to realize the truth. I wasn't just overthinking it. She didn't feel the same way about me anymore. But I still didn't know why. It wasn't until the day I walked in on her talking to someone on the phone in a room I thought was private that I got my first real clue. I was halfway up the stairs when I heard her soft voice, too intimate for a casual conversation. "No, I can't keep doing this," Charlotte whispered. "You don't know how hard this is, but I can't lose him. I can't lose you either." I stopped dead in my tracks. She wasn't talking to me. She was talking to someone else. Someone who clearly meant more to her than she had ever let on. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I couldn't. I didn't want to face the reality of it all. The subtle moments, the quiet silences, they added up. There were times when I saw her smile at me, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. I noticed how her gaze wandered when I spoke of our future, how she hesitated when I held her hand. There was a distance in her now that hadn't been there before, and no amount of love could bridge the gap that had started to grow between us. Still, I held on. I believed in us, in the story we had written together. But deep down, I knew I was running out of time. And I wasn't ready to face what that meant. It was the night before the wedding when it all finally came crashing down. The night I learned that the child she was carrying wasn't mine. The morning before our wedding was supposed to be perfect. I had spent the night pacing, wrestling with my thoughts, but I convinced myself that the wedding would right everything. I still loved Charlotte, and if I could just get through this day, we could start fresh. But as I stood at the foot of the staircase, watching her move around the kitchen, I felt the truth tightening around me like a noose. She looked up when I walked in, offering a smile that, for once, didn't reach her eyes. It was a mask. That much I knew now. "You're up early," Charlotte said, her voice too bright, almost forced. "I thought we could spend the day relaxing, just the two of us, before the chaos of tomorrow." The tone of her voice wasn't comforting. It was more of a plea, a desperate attempt to make everything feel normal again. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to make this work, but how could I when everything inside me screamed that something was horribly wrong? As she stirred coffee into a mug, I took a deep breath. This had gone on long enough. It was time to ask the questions I'd been avoiding, the questions that had kept me up at night. "Charlotte," I started, my voice steady but tense, "why have you been so distant? What's really going on?" Her hand faltered slightly, and for a split second, I thought I saw guilt flash across her face. She quickly masked it with a forced smile, but it didn't fool me. She knew. I knew. We both knew something had shifted. "I'm just nervous," she replied, keeping her gaze fixed on the coffee pot as if it was the most interesting thing in the room. "I've been dealing with so much, wedding stuff, family, everything. It's a lot, you know." I nodded, my eyes narrowing. But I didn't buy it. Not anymore. "I don't think it's just the wedding," I said quietly, my voice steady but low, so as not to let her slip away from this moment. "You've been distant for weeks. It's like I don't even know you anymore." She set the mug down on the counter, her eyes momentarily avoiding mine. I saw her shoulders tense, like she was preparing for something. But I didn't back down. I couldn't. "You don't have to lie to me," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "You've been keeping something from me, Charlotte. And it's not just stress." "What is it?" For a moment, she didn't speak. She turned away from me, her back stiff, her breath shallow. The silence was thick with tension, and I could feel the weight of everything between us, every lie, every half-truth, everything she'd hidden from me. Finally, her voice broke through the silence, barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, her words so soft I almost missed them. "But I don't know how to fix this anymore." My heart skipped. She was admitting it. The distance, the secrets, the coldness, it all made sense now. But there was still one thing I needed to hear. Who is he? I asked, each word like a blade tearing through the air. Charlotte flinched at the question, and I could see her trying to compose herself, but it was too late. The confession hung in the air, unspoken yet so obvious. She didn't answer immediately, but when she did, her words cut deeper than anything I could have imagined. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice trembling as she turned to face me. "I never meant for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. But I had to make a choice. I had to choose him." I stood frozen, unable to process what she had just said. My mind raced, but nothing could prepare me for what she said next. "I'm pregnant, and the father is not you, Daniel." She said the words with such finality, such a quiet weight to them, that they felt like a punch to the gut. The room seemed to close in on me, the air thick with the silence that followed. She had said it. She had finally said it. And with those words, everything shattered. The woman I had trusted, the woman I had loved, had betrayed me in a way that I couldn't even fathom. I took a step back, my legs suddenly weak beneath me. My thoughts were a blur. How could she do this? Why didn't she tell me sooner? What was I supposed to do with this broken reality she had handed me? Who is he? I asked again, though the words felt foreign on my tongue now. I had to know. I had to understand how this had happened, how he had become more important than me. Her gaze dropped to the floor. She didn't answer right away, but the pain in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. He was someone I knew. Someone I'd been blind to. "It's Lucas," she whispered. The name hit me like a tidal wave. Lucas. My best friend. The man I had trusted with my life, the man who had stood by me through everything. And now, the man who had taken my place in her heart. I took a deep breath, but it did nothing to steady me. The betrayal was too much. I had to get out of there, to escape from this nightmare before it consumed me. But there was one final question I needed to ask, a question I had to hear the answer to before I could let go of her forever. "Why didn't you tell me before?" I choked out, my voice cracking as I fought to hold back the tears. "Why wait until the day before the wedding?" She finally looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and regret. "I didn't know how to face you," she whispered. "I thought maybe I could pretend. I thought maybe if I kept lying, things would get better. But I couldn't lie to you anymore." The truth hung heavy between us, the weight of everything I had lost crashing over me like an avalanche. I had loved her. I had trusted her. And now, I was standing here, watching the woman I thought I knew completely unravel. I didn't say anything else. I couldn't. The words were stuck in my throat, and the only thing that remained was the cold, crushing reality of her betrayal. And as I turned to leave, I knew one thing for sure, there was no going back. The next few days passed in a blur. The wedding was only hours away, but all I could think about was the cold weight of Charlotte's betrayal pressing down on me. I was numb. I went through the motions, answering questions about the venue, checking the guest list, even nodding as people congratulated me, but none of it mattered anymore. The woman I was supposed to marry had chosen someone else, and my whole world had crumbled. At first, I thought I'd leave. I almost did. I stood at the door of my apartment, suitcase packed, the keys to a life I thought I knew in my hand. But something kept me there. Maybe it was the lingering hope, the foolish belief that maybe there was a chance for closure, for some explanation that would make everything feel less like a nightmare. Or maybe it was the fact that I had nowhere else to go, no one else who had once mattered as much as Charlotte. I stayed. But I wasn't alone. The day before the wedding, as the tension between Charlotte and me grew unbearable, my phone buzzed with a message that made everything worse. It was from Lucas. "Daniel, we need to talk. I'm sorry about what's happening, but you have to hear my side. My hands shook as I read the message, the screen blurring in front of me. I had spent years thinking of Lucas as my brother, my closest friend, someone who had never let me down. But now, he had been my fiancée's secret lover, the man who had destroyed everything we'd built. I never saw it coming. I texted him back, a cold and terse reply, "There's nothing left to say." I wasn't sure if I was trying to convince him or myself. But he responded almost immediately. "You don't understand. Please. Come to the bar. We need to talk. It's not what you think." I stared at the message for a long time before I made a decision. I wasn't going to let him off that easily. If he was going to take Charlotte from me, he could damn well explain himself. The bar was quiet when I arrived, the kind of place where secrets were shared, and promises broken. It was a place where Lucas and I had spent countless hours together, laughing, talking about our futures, and drinking away the weight of everything we couldn't control. It seemed fitting that our friendship would end here, in this dimly lit space where everything had begun to unravel. Lucas was sitting at a corner booth, his face drawn with exhaustion and guilt. When he saw me, he didn't get up, didn't offer a handshake or a hug, nothing. He just stared at me with a look of regret. I couldn't tell. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to know what was going through his mind. I slid into the seat across from him, the space between us thick with unspoken words. "Why?" I finally asked, the word coming out of me like a question and an accusation all at once. "How long, Lucas? How long has this been going on?" He sighed heavily, rubbing his face with both hands before meeting my gaze. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," he began, his voice strained, like he was trying to find the right words. "Charlotte. She came to me. It wasn't what I wanted, but she needed someone, Daniel. You were busy with your work, and she felt alone. I didn't want to hurt you, man. I never did. But things got complicated." "Complicated?" I echoed, my voice rising in disbelief. "You slept with her. You betrayed me. I thought you were my friend, Lucas. What the hell happened to that?" "I was trying to protect her," he said quickly, his words defensive now. "She wasn't ready for the wedding. She was terrified, Daniel. She didn't know how to tell you, and when she told me, when she confessed to me that she was having doubts, I was there for her. I didn't mean for it to turn into what it did, but I don't know. It just happened." I sat back, the words settling in my mind like a storm I couldn't outrun. His excuse, his justification, sounded like a coward's defense. If he truly cared for me, for our friendship, he would have never crossed that line. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst part was how he kept talking, as if I should understand. "I was going to tell you, Daniel," he said, almost pleading now. "I swear, I was going to tell you. But then she told me she was pregnant. And that changed everything. I thought you'd hate me, man. I didn't know what to do." The room felt like it was closing in. My throat was tight, my hands cold. He was telling me that Charlotte was pregnant now, and that he hadn't just betrayed me once, but he was now entwined in a future with her, a future that was supposed to be mine. "You think I should feel sorry for you?" I snapped, my anger rising. "You ruined everything, Lucas. Everything. She's pregnant with your child, and you're sitting here telling me you thought you were protecting her. You think that makes sense?" He shook his head, his voice softer now. "I never wanted this. I didn't know how to stop it. She was my friend too, Daniel. She came to me when she was lost, and I thought I was helping her. I didn't want to betray you. I swear, I didn't." I leaned forward, my fists clenching on the table, trying to control the boiling rage inside me. This wasn't just about the woman I had loved, this was about the man I had considered my brother, the man who had turned his back on everything we'd built together. You've already destroyed everything, Lucas, I said, my voice quieter now, more measured but with a cold edge. And now you're asking for forgiveness? That's not how this works. You don't get to tear my life apart and then act like you can fix it with a few words. I stood up, grabbing my jacket from the back of the booth. I couldn't look at him anymore. I couldn't stand the sight of the man who had ruined everything. Goodbye, Lucas, I said, turning away. I don't ever want to see you again. As I walked out of the bar, the weight of everything hit me like a tidal wave. The betrayal from Charlotte. The lies from Lucas. The destruction of everything I had believed in. I felt hollow, like a part of me had died that day. But there was something more. A lingering feeling that the worst was yet to come, that this was only the beginning. The days that followed Lucas' confession and Charlotte's betrayal were a blur of numbness and anger, a cocktail of emotions that I couldn't quite process. I didn't want to be around her. I didn't want to face either of them. But there was one thing I knew with a bone-deep certainty: I would make them pay for what they had done. Not just to me, but to everything we had built together. I wasn't going to sit back and let this stain the rest of my life. It started with a single thought. I wanted them to understand the gravity of what they'd taken from me. I wanted them to feel what I felt. The suffocating emptiness, the betrayal that gnawed at my very soul. Revenge, I realized, wouldn't be about destroying them physically, it would be about taking away the one thing they valued most. I'd always been a patient person. I never acted rashly. So, I would wait for the right moment, the right opportunity to strike. It wasn't until the night before the wedding that the plan began to take shape. The venue had been booked for months, the caterers, the photographers, the flowers, everything had been arranged. It was meant to be the culmination of years of planning, of a life I thought I'd be building with Charlotte. But now it was a farce. A joke. And I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I started small. First, I paid a visit to the wedding planner, a woman who had worked with both Charlotte and me to organize the event. She was a professional, and I knew she had no personal stake in what had happened, but I also knew she'd been with us from the beginning, and she had to have seen the cracks in our relationship long before the wedding day. Look, I said to her, keeping my tone calm but firm, I need your help with something. You know I'm not the type to ask for favors, but this is important. I need you to help me make some changes to the reception schedule tomorrow. She looked at me curiously, but I could tell she knew there was something beneath my request. I didn't offer any further explanation, just the promise that it would be for the best. I'll help you, she said after a long pause, and just like that, the first piece of the puzzle was in place. The plan wasn't complicated. It was simple, really. I wasn't going to cancel the wedding. I knew Charlotte would never forgive me if I did that, and frankly, I didn't care about her forgiveness anymore. But I could control the flow of the event, the way it unfolded. I could make it so that the moment they were supposed to be the happiest, the moment they were supposed to start their new life together, would be the one where they both felt the weight of their lies. The next step was to ensure Lucas would be there. I hadn't spoken to him since the night at the bar, but that didn't mean I had lost touch with the few people who still spoke to him. One of them was his cousin, a guy I'd known since high school. I tracked him down and made a simple request. I need you to make sure Lucas shows up tomorrow. Make it clear to him that it's important, that he can't back out. I know he'll try to avoid me, but he won't back down if he knows he has to be there. The cousin didn't question me. He was loyal to Lucas, but he was also loyal to me in his own way. He agreed without hesitation, and just like that, Lucas was going to be there. The final piece was the hardest to pull off. Charlotte. I knew I couldn't confront her directly, not yet. If I did, she'd see right through me, and I wasn't ready for her to see my hand. But I had something else up my sleeve. It had been months since we'd last been intimate, since before all of this began to unravel. But I knew there was still a connection between us, a thread we hadn't quite severed. If I could use that to my advantage, to make her question everything, to make her doubt herself, I would. I'd send her a message that night. Simple, but effective. I still remember what it felt like when you kissed me. You can't just erase that. It wasn't the words that would get her. It was a reminder. The reminder of what we had shared before everything changed. I wasn't just a man scorned, I was a man who had been deeply loved, and she had thrown it away for nothing more than a fleeting affair. I didn't expect her to respond immediately, but I knew she would see the message. And that was all I needed. It would create a seed of doubt. Just a seed. And when that doubt blossomed, when she saw Lucas again, when she stood beside him at that altar, it would eat at her. The morning of the wedding, the world felt wrong. The venue was beautiful, the music was playing, and the guests were arriving, but none of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was the plan, how I was going to watch them both face the consequences of their betrayal. I stood at the back of the church as Charlotte walked down the aisle, her father proudly escorting her toward the man she was supposed to marry. My heart didn't ache as I had expected it to. It felt empty, hollow. The man who stood beside her wasn't me. And though she looked beautiful, perfect even, there was no joy in it anymore. I wasn't just watching her marry Lucas, I was watching her marry a lie. I was watching a future I no longer wanted slip away forever. And then, the moment arrived. Just before the vows were exchanged, as Charlotte stood before Lucas, my voice rang out from the back of the room, clear and cutting. Before we go any further, I think you should know something, Charlotte. Lucas isn't the man you think he is. And neither are you. The room fell silent, the air thick with confusion and anticipation. Charlotte's head whipped around to me, her eyes wide with shock. Lucas looked between us, a flicker of realization passing over his face. I could feel the tension building, the moment of truth hanging in the balance. I know everything, I said, my voice steady, unshaken. I know about your affair. I know about the lies. And tomorrow, you'll both have to face the consequences. For now, though, this wedding. It's over. Charlotte's face turned white as she looked at Lucas, who now stood frozen, his hand clutching the edge of the altar, unable to look at her. I had made my point. And as I turned to leave, I knew I had won. The power had shifted. This wasn't just revenge. It was justice. It was the end of a chapter one had never asked to be a part of, but one that I had now closed for good. As I walked out of the church, my heart still heavy, I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. But I wasn't sure if I was ready for what would come next. The silence in the church was suffocating, and as I walked out through the double doors, the weight of everything settled heavily on my shoulders. I had done what I came to do. I had exposed their lies, and in doing so, I had reclaimed a small piece of myself. The wedding was over. Charlotte's perfect future with Lucas had shattered into a million pieces, and as I stepped into the cold air, I felt an odd sense of freedom, a release from the emotional prison I had built for myself. But as much as I'd wanted to destroy them, to make them feel the pain of what they had done to me, there was a deeper, more unsettling feeling that gnawed at me. Revenge hadn't healed me. It hadn't put back together the broken parts of my heart that Charlotte and Lucas had torn apart. It didn't undo the years I had spent building a life with her, believing in the love we shared. For a moment, I thought that maybe, just maybe, I could walk away from all of it. I could leave this town, disappear into the world where no one knew the story of the woman who betrayed me and the best friend who destroyed my trust. I could start over, build a life that wasn't haunted by the ghosts of my past. But then, just as I was about to step into my car, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen, my stomach sinking. It was a message from an unknown number. "You think this is over, don't you, Daniel? But you haven't seen the whole picture yet. You've only scratched the surface." My blood ran cold. I stared at the message, unable to comprehend what it meant. This wasn't from Charlotte, nor Lucas. It wasn't anyone I recognized. And it wasn't just a vague threat, it felt personal. Whoever had sent it knew exactly what had happened, and worse, they were hinting that there was more to uncover. I shoved the phone back into my pocket, but the words haunted me. I had done everything I could to expose their betrayal, to strip away the illusions they'd built. But now, it felt like the pieces of this puzzle were scattered beyond my reach, like the story wasn't done yet. Something else was waiting in the shadows, something far bigger than I had ever expected. The day was cold, the sky gray, but for the first time in days, I could breathe without the suffocating weight of anger pulling me down. I wasn't going to let whatever came next control me. But there was a part of me, a part that I didn't want to acknowledge, that felt a dark curiosity rising within me. I couldn't walk away just yet. There was a bigger game at play, and whether I liked it or not, I was still a player. Days passed, and the fallout from the wedding was almost instantaneous. Charlotte reached out to me, her messages pleading, desperate, but I ignored them. I couldn't let her back in, not after everything she had done. I'd been through enough, and I refused to let her manipulate me into feeling sorry for her again. Lucas, on the other hand, had gone silent. He disappeared from the circle of friends we once shared, vanishing into the same shadow he had crawled out of when he first betrayed me. But the message still lingered in my mind, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. You haven't seen the whole picture yet. It haunted me, and every day I thought about it, I couldn't shake the feeling that something more was about to unravel. Then, one evening, I received another message, this time from a name I didn't recognize. You don't know what's coming, Daniel. But I do. Charlotte and Lucas aren't the only ones who have something to hide. And you'll want to know the truth before it's too late. I felt the blood drain from my face as I read the words. Who was this person? Why were they reaching out to me? What truth were they talking about? For the first time in weeks, my anger flared again, not because of Charlotte, not because of Lucas, but because someone else was playing a game with me, and I didn't know the rules. Someone was watching from the shadows, pulling strings I hadn't even realized were there. I sat back in my chair, the weight of it all settling on my chest. The lies, the betrayal, the secrets, it wasn't just about Charlotte and Lucas anymore. It wasn't even about revenge anymore. It was about uncovering what had been buried so deep that even I hadn't seen it. I had spent too long in the darkness, clinging to the idea of revenge, thinking it was the only way to make things right. But now, with this message in my hands, it seemed like the real game was just beginning. And the pieces were falling into place, one by one, with a force I couldn't stop. I didn't know who this new person was, or why they were involved, but I knew one thing for sure, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I tucked the phone into my pocket and stood up, looking out over the city skyline. I wasn't just walking away anymore. I had a choice to make. I could keep running, keep avoiding the truth. Or I could dig deeper, uncover what was really going on, and confront whatever shadows lurked behind the lives I thought I knew. And in the quiet of that moment, I realized something chilling, the story of betrayal, fake love, and revenge wasn't over. It was only just beginning. As the city lights flickered below, one thought echoed in my mind, what if the betrayal was never the worst part? What if there was something darker, something deeper lurking beneath the surface of everything I thought I knew? The next chapter of my life was waiting, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for what was coming. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to stop until I had answers. And when the truth finally came to light, no one would be prepared for what I would do next.